Well, President Trump has used the term nasty in reference to yet another woman. This time it is the prime minister of a foreign ally, specifically Denmark, a nation he abruptly canceled on via tweet. President Trump slammed its leader, Mette Frederiksen, after she rejected the president's idea to purchase Greenland. She reportedly said that the conversations are, quote, an absurd discussion. Greenland is not for sale. Greenland is not Danish. Greenland belongs to Greenland. Here was President Trump just a short time ago.
I looked forward to going, but I thought that the Prime Minister's statement that it was absurd, it was an absurd idea, was nasty. I thought it was an inappropriate statement. All she had to do is say, no, we wouldn't be interested, but we can't treat the United States of America the way they treated us under President Obama. I thought it was a very not nice way of saying something. They could have told me no. This is something that's been discussed for many years. Harry Truman had the idea of Greenland. I had the idea. Other people have had the idea. All they had to do is say, no, we'd rather not do that, or we'd rather not talk about it. Don't say what an absurd idea that is. She shouldn't treat the United States that way by saying, what an absurd. She said absurd. That's not the right word to use, absurd.
Well, if anything, the prime minister has been more nice than nasty to the president since he tweeted less than 24 hours ago that he was bailing on her nation. Quote, Denmark is a very special country with incredible people, but based on Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen's comments that she would have no interest in discussing the purchase of Greenland, I will be postponing our meeting scheduled in 2 weeks for another time. Well, here's the prime minister's response, and this is before the president called her comments nasty.
It is with regret and surprise that I received the news that President Trump has cancelled his state visit. I had been looking forward to the visit. This does not change the character of our good relations, and we will, of course, from Denmark, continue our ongoing dialogue with the U.S. on how we can develop our cooperation.
Joining me now is a member of the Liberal Party in the Danish Parliament, Michael Aastrup Jensen. He's also the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. So, Mr. Jensen, thank you so much for being on with me. And I just set it all up. You heard the president call her nasty, etc. Your response?
Well, I think it has been some very surreal days for Denmark and U.S. relations, and now this is just the top of the iceberg. To state quite clearly that this was absurd was actually the top of mind for every Dane. So the Prime Minister spoke for the entire nation.
Everyone thinks it's absurd.
Absolutely. The whole idea that we could actually sell Greenland, which has been part of the Kingdom of Denmark for so many years, but it's also under home rule, meaning that the 55,000 people who live in Greenland actually can decide on their own who they want to be part of or not. So the whole idea was surreal and absurd to start with. And then to cancel a visit to a very close friend and ally is so strange to us that it's actually being perceived by everyone as a grave insult to a friend.
Let's just reminding everyone, you don't need reminding, but just for people in America maybe listening and wondering why this is such an insult and how much of an ally, because Denmark is such an ally to the U.S. Denmark has sent troops to Afghanistan, to Iraq, to Syria, to Kosovo, to Mali. 43 Danes were killed in Afghanistan, 7 in Iraq, and Denmark is a founding member of NATO. You say this is insulting. How damaging is this to the Danish-U.S. relationship?
Well, we have had strong ties with the U.S. before President Trump, and we will also have strong ties with the U.S. after President Trump leaves office. But let's be frank here. The whole way that President Trump is behaving is costing the relationship somewhat, but I hope it won't damage it in the future. So what we will try to do from the Danish side is actually to have a good relations with the country of the U.S. as a whole. Trying to, see if we can strengthen our ties with Congress, with the administration in general, with the Secretary of State, and so on. But President Trump apparently lacks any diplomatic skills whatsoever, and we have to take that into account.
Also taking into account the backdrop of this, we were listening to the president 24 hours ago expressing his support for reinstating Russia into what is now the G7, what would become the G8 if they're included. So what does it say to you that the president appears to be treating Russia and Vladimir Putin better than your people in Denmark?
Well, every day I say to myself that the President Trump cannot get any stranger than yesterday, but he always succeeds somehow. Russia is a great threat to the stability in Europe and in the West in general. And after they annexed part of one of our friends' country, Ukraine, we in the entire Europe, western side of Europe, have seen Russia being more and more aggressive against us. So to see the President Trump apparently trying to be more friends with Putin than with us is saddening, to say the least.
One more question for you, sir, and that is, we have just learned that in the midst of all of this, that President Obama will be traveling to Denmark next month. And presumably, as a former U.S. president, this trip has been in the works for a while, but the announcement coming right now. What do you make of that?
Well, President Obama is a very great friend of Denmark, as has been in the entire presidency. And there is no question that in the population as a whole, President Obama is still being perceived as a close friend. So he will get